All right, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get started. I know y'all are settling in. That's totally fine. We're very informal here. So first of all, thank you everyone for coming, especially those online as well. We appreciate it. Tracy she insisted that I let everyone know how sorry she was that she couldn't make it, especially to you. She really wanted to be here, but she's meeting with the Texas legislature. Fingers crossed that goes well. Yeah, so she just wanted me to tell you guys that. We will be having another event in this room at 1:30, just FYI, so just pick up your trash, that kind of good stuff. There are sign-in sheets at the very back on the table over there, so whenever y'all get a chance, if y'all could sign in for us, that would be great. The restrooms right out in the hall, there's a Coke machine, vending machine, if you need anything, restrooms. So Rebecca will be covering some sensitive topics, including death, suicide, and mental illness. We understand this could be triggering, so if at any point anybody feels that they need to leave, that is absolutely okay. Completely understand. We will have a slide at the end that does have numbers listed for, suicide prevention and crisis management and things like that. So if you need that information. So I'm going to introduce Rebecca. Rebecca was born and raised right down the road in Iola, where she grew up on a farm and still helps her parents with the operation. She first became interested in law enforcement at the young age of 16, where she worked for TABC undercover. And after graduating from high school, she became a 911 dispatcher and then moved on to become an investigative assistant. Rebecca credits TEAP and Texas Forensic Science Academy for the training that led her to this field. Her career as a crime scene investigator began in 2008, where she eventually became the CSU supervisor and currently supervises 3 other crime scene investigators. In December of 21, Rebecca was ranked 36 out of 2,442 forensic examiners across the United States. And she has many other accolades throughout her career. So please help me in welcoming Rebecca.
Thank you. I am going to be a whole lot less, this is going to be informal, okay? I'm just going to tell you, that's me. I'm informal. I don't have a pretty PowerPoint or anything to go up there. But I do have some things I want to talk about today, and talk about, we're going to do kind of a 2-part. I want to go over kind of, how I got started, the obstacles that I've had along the way. And then we're going to talk about like your passion and drive and what drives you to succeed in a job, and kind of go over some of that. So like she said, I started at the young age of 16. I was a beer buying little girl, okay? And I would do, Brazos County Attorney's Office had a grant that they would go in and as a 16-year-old, we'd go in and try and buy alcohol. And they would, if we succeeded, great. If not, then we'd move on to the next place. So that was how I originally became interested in law enforcement. I remember going home and my parents would be asleep at like 11:30 at night. And I would just be so excited to wake them up and tell them like, if someone got arrested or whatever. And it was just, I was so excited. I loved doing it. And so I always was interested in law enforcement ever since high school. But I never thought I was smart enough. I knew I didn't want to be a cop. I love forensic science stuff, the true crimes, the TV shows and all that, but they're like chemists and they're smart people. And I'm not that person. So, looking back, I actually found an autobiography that I wrote in the 7th grade. Okay. The other day, I was cleaning out my shoe closet. Found this autobiography, and the very last page had my dreams and goals, okay, as a 7th grader. Do y'all remember what your dreams were as a 7th grader? Okay, so the first dream that I had was to attend Texas A&M and be a pediatrician. I don't know where that came from. If that didn't work out, I was going to be an elementary teacher and teach 3rd grade. I was going to be married and have no more than 2 kids. I was going to, in my free time, enjoy swimming, playing tennis, jogging. What was the other one? We'll just go with those. Okay. So let's go back to number 1, the attending Texas A&M. I went to Sam Houston State for 1 year. Evidently, you have to attend class to get a degree. Just very small detail there. That was hard to explain to the parents, but it's okay. I am not married. I don't have any kids. I don't know where swimming came from because I don't enjoy swimming. If I'm running or jogging, you better run with me because something's chasing me because I don't run or jog. I've never played tennis in my life. So I don't know where these dreams and stuff came from, but there was one that was actually still true, and it was being involved in my church and I still do attend the church that I've attended since I was a baby. And so it was actually kind of interesting going into this because I want to talk about kind of my career and how we've, how I've progressed. And so I was looking back and I was like, it goes to say that our dreams and our wishes as little kids, they adjust as we grow older. And even in college, you could be in nursing school and be like, whoa, this is not for me, and transition. That's the time to transition before you actually get in a career that you totally hate. I tell my girls all the time, they're back there, my 3 CSIs, that if you ever come to work and you dread coming to work, or someone just gets on your nerves every time you come in, then we've got to talk, because you should not dread coming to work. You should enjoy your job. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have good days. But overall, you should enjoy coming to work and enjoy what you do. Okay. So I started out after Sam Houston. I went and became a 911 dispatcher. I loved it. Loved dispatching. I loved the fast pace. I loved everything about it. But what was hard was not ever knowing the outcome after, the calls. And I still remember distinctly, like, I don't know how old she was. She was like 90 years old, and she called 911, and she literally breathed her last breath on the phone with me, and she died. I remember the murders that, I took over the phone. I remember all those cases. But what I would do is afterwards, I'd wait till the detectives entered their reports and stuff, and then I'd go in and read what happened afterwards. So when a job came open at the police department, I was like, I want it. Okay. I was not their first pick. They went to hire someone else. And in doing so, I can't remember what she wanted, mileage or something that they couldn't give her. And so they had to call, or they called and offered me the job. So I started out as an investigative assistant, and what I did was just investigate misdemeanor cases. And then I did crime scene kind of on the side. I was just the helper. I was just the go get me this, go get me that. And then they were, talking about transitioning into me doing more. So with that, in 2008, they asked if I would like to do crime scene full time as a civilian. So at that time, we had sworn CSIs. And they were looking kind of the trend of the state and nation was kind of going towards civilians because they can pay us less. We usually stay a little bit longer because, if we get in trouble, we lose our job. We don't get moved to patrol or something else. And so that was the way that they were headed. So they asked me if I'd be interested in being a full-time CSI. Okay, at that time, I had never had a decomp. Everybody know what a decomp is? A decomposing body. Okay. I'm not going to go into details. Y'all are eating, but there's a very distinct odor and vision. And I had not had one. So, and I knew that was coming. Have you ever taken a job and you know that you're going to have to face something, but okay, what happens if I can't do it? Am I going to lose my job? Like, they assured me I'd be okay. So I started as a CSI as a civilian and as a female civilian. Now, I am not one to get up here and say females have it harder than men and females this and that. Okay. I think that we need to work, work a little harder and show them that we can do what we want to do. But there are obstacles that we come across. And I would say more obstacles as a civilian than as a female. So being a civilian means I do not carry a gun. I do not carry a badge. And when we're on crime scenes, a lot of times the officers are sitting in their car writing their report. Do you know how many times suspects could come back to a scene? Have y'all ever heard of that happening? It's happened before, okay? And so we're defenseless, like and we rely on those officers to protect us. And that's when I teach the academy and I teach them, I'm like, y'all have to remember that. If we're in a convenience store and you hear us hollering on the radio at 10 o'clock at night, something went bad because we have no help, okay? So, but it also means, we're not having to do the training and stuff that they have to, the continuing education. But we do have, as crime scene investigators, we have our own training that we have to keep up with and stay up to date on the, current terminology and all that. So as I started going to TEACS, Texas Forensic Science Academy, and it was, like she said, I do credit TEACS and the Forensic Science Academy for where I am today. Not only do they put phenomenal classes on, but also the networking and the relationships that I've built through those classes has been amazing. We had a guest preacher at our church this past Sunday, and I introduced myself at the last, and he said, I know you. I said, how do you know me? He said, you were in my forensic science class at TEACS in 2008. And I was like, that's impressive that you remember that. But it's you meet people, and some of those we have relationships with people. I still talk to Christine. If I have a case that I'm like, I need help, I'll call Christine and ask, hey, what do you think about this? And that's why networking is so important, because you can pretty much call and ask questions you have to know, what their expertise is. So through those classes and stuff, y'all can come on in. Not to call you out, but there's two up here. But as I've gone through as I went through those classes, I met people. And one of the obstacles that I was having at that time was a coworker that was difficult, very difficult, okay? When I say we had a rough year, the beginning of my career, it was a horrible year. I cried every day. I hated my job. I was scared to go to work. And I liked the job, but I hated the atmosphere that I was in. Okay. But I was determined. I was not going to let him. He was going to be the one that quit, or they're going to have to fire both of us, because I was not going to quit. I was going to last. And I did. He ended up moving on and going somewhere else. And through that, after the fact, I had some more obstacles to overcome, because he was a former cop. So naturally, cops talk to cops, and they're going to respect. It's like CSIs. We all talk to each other, and we know, and we're going to respect somebody. And so after he left, I was still having to deal with that and overcome that reputation that he had set for me. And it took I don't know, probably about 6 months for me to overcome that, and for people to see that what was said wasn't truly happening and wasn't the truth about. But I had to do that through working my butt off and proving that I could do the job, and that I was a strong person, and I was a hard worker. Okay. So that was my first kind of big obstacle in the job. And it was hard. When I say that was a hard time in my life, it was very hard. And again, if you're miserable at work, it just makes you take it home with you. It bleeds over into your home life. It's hard. Okay. Overcame it, have gone through the Texas Forensic Science Academy, have gained a ton of knowledge. I do not know everything. And I tell the girls, if I ever hear you say, I know everything, we're gonna be in trouble, because you should always learn. It doesn't matter what profession you're in, you should always learn, you should always grow, and you should never assume that you know everything, because there's always something else to learn. And it is okay to say, I do not know, or I don't know, but you know what? I have a friend that may know that answer. Let me call them. You'll be more respected doing that than you will be just acting like you know and going on. Okay. So went through that. Last, let's see, we hired a new supervisor in 2010. And I worked for the unit through, well, this whole time. And then last year in 2021, or what's last year, 2022, he ended up retiring and moving to Florida. And I ended up getting the supervisor position. And to say I was nervous, I was nervous. Now I've done the job. I mean, I've done the job for, 15 years, but there's a difference in doing the job, still doing all your work, being in charge of, at the time, it was 2 other people. One was leaving to go to the police academy. And then I had 2 people to hire, train, and get working. Okay. And that's scary. It is, because they are depending on you to teach them. And that's probably one of my most proud moments as a supervisor is that I do have a wonderful unit. I get compliments from, other agencies and the Rangers at how awesome my unit is and how hardworking they are. And I tell them, I say, y'all make me look good because y'all are the ones doing the work, but we're all a team. So thank you for all of their hard work and stuff. So when we talk about passion or what do y'all think about when you talk about passion, doing something, whether it be your job, a sports event? I'm going to ask questions, so y'all help me out here. But what do you think about when you talk about passion?
I think it's just having the heart to want to do the best that you can and make everything that you work with better because you have such a passion and you've invested who you are into this, job or group that you work with outside of work or whatever it is. It's something that you want to make better.
Very good. Does anybody else have something?
Be excited to do it.
Okay.
Enthusiasm, I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Being emotionally involved or invested, emotionally invested.
Okay, very good.
I would say there's maybe 2 sides to that, because on one end, you can be really excited and passionate about something, but if you're passionate about something and something goes wrong, it can also have an effect on your emotions negatively.
Yes. And that is very, I like that you said that because that's not something I even thought about like talking about, but it is. And in fact, sometimes at work, I've said before, I've got to quit being so passionate about things because I get drove up, little things. There's one detective at Bryan PD that he can push my button and I'm like, oh. So, but passion is a great thing. It's what makes us good at whatever we're working on, whether it be sports, whether it be our home life, being a good mom, being a good wife, husband, dad. Whatever it may be, passion is going to help you do that. Does that mean that you can't do a good job if you're not passionate about it? No. There's some people that they're stoic. They aren't going to love anything that they do. And that doesn't mean that they can't be a good worker and still do. But there's something about those people that are passionate about doing that job and wanting to always do better. Okay. Is doing our job is that enough? No. What are we trying to do? Anybody?
Make a difference.
Make a difference. What else? Better ourselves. Good. What else?
Excellence.
Excellence. Good. Anybody else?
Okay, it's not just doing our job, but helping those that might be stepping into your role later, kind of developing others around you, helping others in their work.
Very good. So we should strive to not only make ourselves better, but also, have you ever heard the phrase when you go to a hotel or a meeting place or something, you should always leave the place cleaner or neater than the way you found it. Okay. And that's kind of how we need to look at our jobs and our careers at, like she said, affect the people around you, the world, in a way that we can leave it better than what we came into. Okay. So one of the things that we do as crime scene investigators. We go into and we investigate, obviously death scenes. And one of the hard ones that we have to do are child and infant deaths. Okay. That's one of the scenes that I told myself in the very beginning of my career that if I ever go to a child or an infant death and it doesn't affect me, I've got to get out because I don't want this job to change me in a way that's not who I am. I get goosebumps even just talking about. Because a child dying is not normal, okay? And it should affect everyone. Now, going back to the women versus men, we as women process things differently. We handle emotions, grief, death differently. The guys never cry when we're on scenes or anything. Me, on the other hand, the JP tells me, the Justice of the Peace tells me that I'm in charge of handling the baby with the mom, okay? When a baby dies, we don't normally let the parents hold them because it's a crime scene, depending on the situation. But they wanted me to hold the baby with the mom. And I'm an emotional person as it is, okay? And you know what? We sat there and I squatted there and I held that baby and I boohooed with that mom while she said a prayer. It was not bringing that baby back, but that is having passion and knowing that I may not be able to help her, but I can help someone else. Okay. And we'll get to that a little bit later. When we just do our job, we've got to strive to do more. Always, I drive my girls crazy because I'm always coming up with these ideas like, hey, let's do this and hey, let's do that. And they're like, stop. But that's just something that we should always do. Don't ever pass a piece of trash on the ground and just keep walking. Okay. If it's at the police department, we have trash that blows around and I'm constantly picking it up. Because I should be proud of that police department. I work there. It's reflective of not only the chief of police, it's reflective of me. And I was raised by wonderful parents that you pick it up, okay? So that's kind of what I'm talking about whenever always going that extra step in whatever you do. We had and I'm going to tell a couple of stories, just most of the time that's what people want to hear anyways. So I'll tell a couple stories and then I'm going to open y'all up to asking questions on if y'all have a question about crime scene or supervising or just a general question, be thinking of it and you're welcome to ask here in a little bit. But we had a death investigation and it was one of the things that we work actually quite a bit are suicides. A lot of the general public does not know how many suicides that we work because it's not on TV, it's not advertised, it's a very private matter. But suicides, in my opinion, are the saddest ones, okay? Their family is left to deal with this devastation that the family did not ask for. And a lot of times the family has no idea why they committed suicide. Do y'all think that suicide notes are common or uncommon? Who says common? Okay, who says uncommon?
Less common.
Less common, okay. So we get kind of a mixture of both. A lot of times we do not get suicide notes. And if we do get a note, it doesn't explain why. They're just leaving the note to say, I love you. I'm sorry I had to do this. That doesn't tell me why. That doesn't explain. So these families are left not knowing if they had done something or what they were facing as an individual, and that's hard. And we grieve with those people. Okay, so suicides are very hard. We had a investigation a couple of years ago, and it was a lady that she had been infested in another city with bird mites. Okay, I did not know what bird mites were. Do y'all know what bird mites are? No, don't look it up because then you'll start like itching and all over. It's a thing. And she had been infested by bird mites, and the sister and brother-in-law said it was legit, like she had to go get sprayed, the house and everything. So she moved, and they had a vacant house that they allowed her, the sister and brother-in-law, to live in. Well, she was doing good. She had a little bit of mental illness, but not bad. And next thing you know, she thinks she's infested with bird mites again in her house. Okay, so evidently, if you're infested with bird mites, you put everything in plastic. And when I say everything was in plastic, her suicide note, her phone, every single thing was in plastic. All of her clothes, plastic. Her toothbrush, plastic. Soap in the shower, plastic. Everything was in plastic, okay? That scene, she ended up committing suicide by gunshot. And as we're working it, and I kept going back and forth to the crime scene van, getting materials and stuff. And the family was in the truck just boohooing. And it's their house that they let her live in. Now they have this house to clean up that your sister and sister-in-law just committed suicide in. And what are they left to do? And so I talked to brother-in-law and I said, do y'all have a company that y'all are going to call to come clean this up? And he lowered his head and he said, no. He said, I'm going to do it myself. And I was like, no, we can't do this on every scene. Some scenes are beyond what we can help with, but this was one of those scenes that we could help with. So I said, where's trash bags? And he told me where they were. And I went in, and so there's one thing you'll learn about me here in a little bit. And I'm a very bossy, pushy, naggy. I'm a female, right? Someone also said that we're a little bit crazy, just a little bit, but and so I went in and I told the officers, I said, here's some Clorox wipes, here's some gloves, and we're cleaning the walls and the ceiling. And they were like, what are we gonna do with all this? And I said, the mattress cover will just go in the trash. We're throwing everything away and we're cleaning it. And when we left that house, there were 2 bullet holes in the wall. That's it. No sign of blood, no sign of hair, no sign of death at all, other than a vacant room with a bed in it. And we didn't know how the family reacted. That's not why we did it, okay? We can't do things with the intention of getting positive feedback or something in the end. We have to do things because it's the right thing to do, and sometimes it's hard. And about a month later, we received a letter in the mail from the chief, or the chief received it, and it was from the brother-in-law. And it was a 2-page letter on the impact that we made, something so small that we did, or that we thought was so small. He will forever remember, and he will forever appreciate. And it was the nicest letter that he wrote about that he'll never forget the Bryan Police Department, and specifically our names, and us going that extra step and helping them out and doing that. Okay. It's hard enough dealing with the death of a loved one, but when you have to go in and see the aftermath of it, that's hard. Okay. And a lot of times people have friends that'll come in and help with it. There's companies out there. And so again, we can't do them all, because some of them, this was just a unique situation that it's one of those we try and help when we can. Okay. So going back to being pushy, nagging, bossy, it's all a little story here. And it was one of those times that, and it's hard getting up here talking about myself, because that's not what we're trained to do. So, but I'm going to tell this story because I think it's a neat story. But we had a missing person that occurred. And it was a female that was about 21 years old, 21, 25, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And she just went missing. Mom lived out of town, boyfriend lived in town, and he was leaving the state the next day. Okay. There were some suspicious circumstances around her missing that the detectives were concerned about. And so I got called in about 11:30 at night to download the boyfriend's phone before he left town. Boyfriend's phone was like a terabyte size phone. That's a large phone. It takes a long time to download. Okay. So I'm sitting there waiting. And as we're waiting, the detective is in my office and we're waiting and waiting. And the detective gets a phone call from another agency. And the other agency, the deputy is out there and he says, we found the car for her. Mom was able to ping the phone finally, and we located the car. It's by the river. There's a bridge. But she's not, we can't find her. The car's all locked up. He said, it looks suspicious. It's weird. But he said, I have a wrecker here. We're about to tow it. What do you want to do? And I said, stop. I said, does it look like she jumped off the bridge? And he immediately takes me off speakerphone with the mom listening. And says, no, I don't think. He was like, by the way, you were on speakerphone. Mom just heard you ask that. And I was like, great. So I said, let's get drones out there. Okay. This is not in Bryan. It's a neighboring county, which we don't have jurisdiction over. But I said, let's get drones. Well, the detective was like, if she's dead, it's not going to pick anything up. And I was like, I don't care. Let's go get drones. Because it was just open fields and then the river. And he was like, Rebecca, it's not going to do any good. I was like, you either call them or I'm calling them, one or the other, but we're getting drones out there. So talk to the sergeant over the drones. I said, hey, let's, and he was like, well, it's not going to do much good if she's dead, and kind of him on. And I was like, listen, let's just do it. We have nothing to lose. Okay. So I told the deputy for this other county, I said, do not touch that car, please. And he was like, okay. So I told the investigator, I said, drive me out there. Let's go. And he was like, why? I said, it's our missing person. I want to go see the scene and make sure it's not, And he was like, okay. So he knows better than to argue with me too much. So we hop in the car and I call Callie in to come finish doing the downloading so that I could go do the scene in the other county. And when we get there, we see the drone team beat us there. So they had drones up in the air. We had 3 drones. They didn't want to call drones out at first, but then we had 3. So, which I'm very thankful for. Drones up in the air. And then I see this car. I see the girl's car. And then I see the mom sitting in another car. And they told me that's mom. She's very cooperative. And I said, okay, tell me a little bit about how do we get here? How do we... And she's been missing for 2 days, and we're going to call her Maria. And she'd been missing for 2 days, and no one had heard from her. Okay. Her phone was off. And then all of a sudden, mom kept trying to ping her phone, and all of a sudden her phone is on and pings to where we were. And so mom went there and then said her vehicle's here, but she's not here. Okay. We're going to call mom Sally. Okay. So Sally's sitting in the car and she's on the phone trying to coordinate stuff, and she's emotional. The deputy tells me once they found the phone, he was like, it was really strange. And I was like, well, was the phone, where was it? And he said, well, it was turned upside down on the ground on top of earbuds under the car. And I said, chunked under the car? Or he said, no, strategically placed under the car. He said, and the car, there's a water bottle that had some condensation still on it that was on the windshield of the car that looked like, it was pretty recent. Okay. So I said, stop, let me go get the camera, start, taking photos and stuff. So as I'm walking back to my car, I hear the drone operators talking, and they're asking this other county, do y'all have anybody out in the field? And they said, no. And they were like, well, we see a hot spot on this, deal. And I'm like, oh God, she just did it. That's my first thought. And so next thing you know, there's this figure walking towards us. Now, the grass is, I'm not joking, this high. Okay. It's tall. And this person's walking through this high grass. And as they get closer to us, the detective hollers out and says, Maria. And I will never, ever forget the look in her eyes was just, I've never seen it before. It was just this stoic, like, it was weird. And she says, yes. And they're like, what are you doing out here? And she said, I came out here to kill myself. And they said, well, okay. She said, I have the gun in my backpack. And they're like, well, let us have that. They take her backpack away and they go and put her in the car because at that time she was a danger to herself. Okay. So I'm standing there. Now, CSIs, we don't normally talk with families a whole lot. I'm a social person. I like to talk. So a lot of times I will, depending on the situation, I'll go and talk or, something, answer questions. But normally we just don't. Okay. Well, they were dealing with her, but no one had gone and told mama that she was alive. Mom never saw her come out like she did. And so I said, you know what? I'm not asking permission. I'm just going to go do it. So I go knock on the window and I said, Miss Sally? And she said, yes. And I said, we found your daughter and she's alive. And she started boo-hooing. Okay. She said, oh my gosh, Rebecca. She said, I'm not a Christian. I've never prayed to God before. And she said, when y'all got out here, I prayed to God to please help her. And she said, I have never felt this before. I don't know what it was. She said, but as I was praying, peace flooded my body. Now, I've told this story a lot and I still get chill bumps. And I said, Miss Sally, I said, I'm not supposed to do this. We're not supposed to mix religion. And I said, but that was the Holy Spirit flooding your body and telling you it was going to be okay. And she said, Rebecca, I knew she was dead. I knew that y'all were just going to find a body. Why was I at peace with it? And I said, because she wasn't. And I said, let us go deal with that. So they take her, she gets admitted to a mental hospital for quite a length of time, gets the help that she needs. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. I couldn't stop thinking about, oh my gosh. Number one, I've never seen, I'm a Christian and I see things happen, it's like, oh my goodness, they no longer have cancer. They no longer have this, but I've never truly seen, in my opinion, a miracle that happened right before us. That doesn't happen. We always come in after the fact and we always get the body to process. But she stopped and she didn't do it. So I called mom, which is another thing we don't normally do, but I called mom after the weekend and I said, I just wanted to check and see how, I thought maybe just a couple days in the mental hospital and she'd be out. And she said, oh no, she said, she's in there. And she said, let me tell you what she told me. She'd been out there for 2 days. She had not eaten or drank anything in 2 days. No one had, she said no one had contacted her, like, to check on her. She said when she turned her phone on, there weren't any text messages or anything like that. And she said, nobody cared about me. And she said, I decided I was going to do it. Made up my mind. She said, I was trying to build up the courage to actually do it. And she said, so I wanted you to find my body, Mom. So I turned my phone on because I knew you'd ping it eventually and you'd find my car and then they'd come out here and look for me and find my body. And she said, I was walking back to the field. She said, I didn't want to do it on the road where everybody could see. So she was going to walk back to the field and do it. And she says, I'm listening to the birds and, I see fireflies. It's at night. And she says, I'm just taking it all in and just thinking. And a little bit later, she sits there for a little bit. And a little bit later, she says, she takes the gun out of her backpack and she puts it to her head. And as she puts it to her head and she's about to pull the trigger, now this is from her. She says, I hear your voice, Mom. I hear you calling my name. And she says, I look up and I see these things flying up above, the drones. And she said, and then I look and I see the police car lights. And she said, I saw police car lights everywhere. And she said, oh my gosh, someone does care about me. They came looking for me, not just mom, but they have a whole bunch of people out here. And she said, I decided I couldn't kill myself. And I put that gun down, put it away, and decided I would come out. And I said, so about the name thing, like, when did she hear you call her name? And she says, the only time I called her name, Rebecca, was when I was sitting in my car with the windows up. And I was praying to God for the first time. And I was saying her name. Please don't leave me. I love you so much. She said, I don't know how to pray, but I figured I'd just talk and call her name and talk to, and she said, I thought I'd just give this God thing a chance. And she says, oh my gosh, look what happened. And through that, I learned a couple valuable lessons. Number one, it's okay to be pushy and go with your gut on things that you're passionate about and you know, okay? Had I not, and I strongly believe this, and I'm not saying this to brag on myself, but had I not insisted that we get the drones out there, the deputy would have towed her car and confirmed exactly what she was concerned about and said was nobody cared. And we would not have found her until daylight. Daylight would have been the difference in life or death for that lady. They go to church in another town. Has counseling through the church's, the pastor's wife. They attend regularly. She is on medication that has stabilized her. She said she never, ever wants to get back to that place that she was, that she knows how dark of a place it was and that she can't ever go back there. She was basically living a double life. She had been telling her parents that she'd been going to college, not the same thing as what mine was. But she had been going to college, she'd been paying for all this, and she had just not been attending. She had some personal issues that had taken place that was really affecting her emotionally. She had a lot going on. And instead of reaching out and trying to talk to somebody at the time, she just was dealing with it in her own way. And I learned so much from that investigation. I learned so much. And again, I'm not trying to get religious or anything, but it was just one of those experiences that I was so excited about when it happened after the fact, that look what happened. Like, my pushiness and nagging and telling the detective, you either take me or I'm going myself, knowing I ain't going out there by myself. I would have, but it was just one of those things that I was insistent on, and I wasn't taking no as an answer. I'm not always that pushy or always that I'm passionate about things, but this was something that I knew, I don't know how, but I knew that we had to do the right thing. So with that, I always encourage people to don't just do your job, be passionate about whatever you're doing, whether it be being a friend, a good friend, whether it be being a basketball player or doing, a sport, or being a good mom or a good dad, or being a good worker. Don't ever just settle for the minimum. Always strive to go ahead and do that extra step. Pick up that trash off of the ground. Help the person that you may not like, but they need help. Help them. Don't ever turn away somebody that may need help, because you don't know what that person is dealing with in their personal life, where you turning them away could be the matter of life or death. Any questions? Anything about crime scene? Anything that y'all would like to ask?
I was just gonna ask, how long, like, was your education process like leading up to a career? Yes. I mean, I know it's kind of ongoing, but like to just get started.
So with me, I'm not your prime example. When I say I truly was blessed in this whole opportunity and stuff. I really was. So with where we were at that time, I didn't have a degree. And they were okay with that at the police department because they knew me, they knew my work ethic, and they knew that I would, and they said, listen, if you'll just stick with us, we'll send you to the training and stuff that you need. And through that, I developed a relationship with the Forensic Science Academy, and I was able to complete the whole Forensic Science Academy. And so that was ongoing. But like right now, we want a 4-year degree or an associate's degree with experience. But I also have learned a valuable lesson in hiring is, sometimes your qualified applicants don't always make it to you as a supervisor. HR filters a lot of those out. And one of my girls was one that HR had filtered out because she didn't meet the qualifications. And guess what? She's great. She is a hard worker. They both, or all three are, sorry, Callie. They all three are. But I think about, and I told her, I said, you're like my little, because I'm so proud of where you've come because they didn't want you. You didn't meet their qualifications, but we gave her a chance and she has proven herself by her work ethic and her drive to want to be a CSI, want to do better, that she's done it. So, yes, ma'am.
I have my questions. The first one is, three on my questions. What is the best path to follow to get into criminal investigation career?
Number one, I would encourage you to get a degree, go to college, get a degree, and try and get an internship or volunteer. Even if it's volunteering for an agency or something, you're building those relationships. And so we don't always have the opportunity for paid internships or anything like that. Around here, it's kind of hard to find. But volunteer. I know College Station PD has an excellent volunteer. He's not looking for a job, but he's a volunteer that, without him, they would, be hurting a little bit because he does so much. He's building those relationships where if he were to need a job, I guarantee you they'd hire him in a heartbeat. You're getting your foot in the door by doing that. It all depends if you want to be civilian or sworn. If you want to be a sworn officer, then you can find an agency, go through the police academy, or you can put yourself through the police academy. But as civilian, I would encourage what I talked about.
And question number 2 is, how do you handle the stress associated with investigations?
So it depends. Number one, we kind of have a weird sense of humor, as just a little bit. In fact, my dad was watching the local media channel one night and he called me, and this was after a homicide, and he said, Rebecca Ann Went, why were y'all out there laughing outside of the house? He was like, do you know how unprofessional that was? And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, go look at the story online. He was like, it looks ridiculous. Y'all are laughing and this man lost his life. And I go and look and I was like, Dad, you're absolutely correct. But do you know how long we'd been on that scene? We were out there for like 10 hours before they came and took that shot. And I said, we were not talking about anything. We were probably making fun of the detective that always gives us a hard time. So when I say that, we deal with things, infant and children death. We will talk about it. We talk about it with each other, but then we also have a peer support group, which is important at our agency. And then most agencies have a critical incident group that, like our department, a lot of times will make it mandatory if it's a child or infant death that we have to attend. And I've always said, in the beginning, I would for sure attend. And then it was like, I don't really need this, but I always would still go because I never wanted the person that really did need it to be the only one in that room. And so they don't know if I need it or not. So I went and I participated just like everybody else, so that they did not feel like they were alone in that process. We talk with each other, we laugh a lot after the fact, but there are things that just take time to process. There's been, a lot of our kid cases, we know what happened, but we don't know exactly what happened. And those are hard because we process that in our brain over and over. And then we have to relive it at trial but it's just something that we kind of adapt to and overcome.
Another question is, how do you deal with other equally passionate colleagues but see situations from opposite ends of the spectrum?
So I'll be honest, my lieutenant, actually my evaluation, he was like, so is there any drama going on in the office? I said, nope. He said, so you're telling me that there's 4 women in your office and there's no drama? And I said, yeah. Have you heard about any? He said, nope, that's why I'm concerned. And I said, well, we are all different personalities. Okay. Y'all have gotten a little bit of an insight into my personality. I'm very pushy, nagging, persistent. If you come in my office, everything's organized. Everything has a place. I drive my girls crazy with that. But they are all different personalities. And because they're all different personalities, we mesh well together. If we had 4 of me, we'd be in trouble. Okay. And that's usually when your personalities clash. But we really haven't had an incident where we've been like at total opposite ends of the spectrum. We pretty well agree, we agree upon the same things. Maybe slight differences, but we always talk it out and we overcome it. Yes, ma'am.
So you've talked a little bit about being assertive in the workplace. Has that been like, have you received positive feedback for that? And if and when you do not receive positive feedback for that, how do you continue to use that as a strength?
Because I have to know, like I talked about earlier, in law enforcement, you don't get a lot of positive feedback. It's just not something. I had a lieutenant at one time that the big thing was issuing challenge coins and commendations for going above and beyond on this specific case. And the lieutenant at the time, he was like, you're getting a coin for doing your job. And that was his attitude. And it's like, no, I mean, there's certain times where you do, but there's just not, our supervisors and stuff will say, good job, and recognize. But we have to realize that we can't do it for the positive feedback. And we have that discussion in our office because we do get frustrated when we do all this extra stuff and they're like, oh, thanks. Thanks. But we have to do what we know is right. And if I know that I did the right thing, then that's all I can base if I do it again or, keep that attitude. There are times that I've received negative feedback and I've been told, not your place, you're being a little pushy. And most of the time when they said that, they were right, because I do get so worked up in things. And being civilian versus sworn, it's that fine line because we're not sworn, but we work very hand in hand with them. So, a lot of people don't even know that we're not sworn. So that's a lot of times where I kind of cross that line of, hey, the search warrant doesn't say, and they're like, it's my search warrant, whatever. And they're right, but that's pretty much, we have to do the right thing because it is the right thing. And we feel not because of our own personal agendas, but because whatever task we're trying to get done needs to be done. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was in school year dispatchers and I never realized that was part of your job, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't get that often.
Yeah.
But on the part of the negative feedback that you got to fight, that you were fighting in the beginning, and you said women and men, we filter through things differently. What advice would you give when it comes to negative, like it not taking it so personal as a female, when you do get that negative criticism?
So we talk about, I use that case or that situation a lot. And I'll be honest, that was 15 years ago. I was immature. I was younger. I didn't know how to deal with a lot of that stuff. Was I completely innocent in the situation? No, I probably did things that irritated him, I know I did. But would I handle the situation differently now? Probably so. A lot of the stuff that bothered me back then, I'm just like, whatever, like, I don't care what you think. So I think a lot of times, and that attitude is good and it's bad. Caring about what everybody is concerned about or what everybody thinks can be bad. And if we're always worrying about, oh my gosh, she looked at me wrong. And I'm that person. I'm like, they looked at me and just like looked away. What would I do? Like, and I constantly think about, if we do that, it's not going to work. We have to just do our job, do the best we can. And again, I had to overcome and literally prove myself. They have their perception of me. I've got to prove them wrong. Those first impressions of people, we always talk about first impressions and how they're hard to, once you're called, which this was not one thing that I was called, but like once you're called lazy or you don't do their job, those are hard things to overcome. But when it's accusations that, someone makes about you that you can prove, and you can prove it by just being you and doing your job the way you're supposed to, that's how, and it takes time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Did that answer your question for the most part? Yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask, what are your personal coping mechanisms when it comes to dealing with stress?
Well, now I exercise. I don't like exercising. I don't encourage it. But having 4 hip surgeries, I've had to figure out something to exercise and rebuild. But I talk to my parents a lot about, they don't know specific case things, but I'll just vent to them about, in general, if it's work or something. And then we talk amongst the office. We all have kind of our friends within the police department that it's hard because we can't always, like, I can't come to you and vent and tell you everything that I'm upset about or whatever. But with someone in the department, we can, because we're all aware of the same cases. And so that's where the peer support group comes in. And that's where, talking to someone. As far as coping mechanism for myself, I work out. I have a little toy poodle that it never fails. When I have a bad day at work, he somehow knows. And he comes and he's so excited to see me when I get home. And, sometimes I'll just take and do a walk in the evening if I'm like super worked up about something. But it's just finding something that works for you, because what works for me isn't going to work for you. I don't run, a lot of people run to relieve stress. That's not me. So anybody else? No one else? Okay.
Well, thank you.
All right.
So much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Rebecca, again. And I just wanted to kind of recap some of the key takeaways that we have from today. I have been accused of being really passionate. So I'm like speaking my language here. So I would say that, I've told my employees this before, we spend 8 hours a day with each other. And less than that with our families at night. So you need to enjoy the people that you work with. So coming to work and enjoying your job and enjoying the people you work with is something that should be a priority in your daily life. And if it's not, then transition, like you talked about. I always say when I grow up, I'm going to own a floral shop. So one of these days I'm going to own a floral shop, but I'll love what I do in the meantime. So you talked about always wanting to learn. It's okay to say you don't know, but I'm going to find out. And then going the extra step. I loved what you said. Don't pass a piece of trash on the ground and leave it. That's everything. If you pass something, if you see somebody, if you see something that needs to be done, take the initiative, go the extra step, and you'll make a difference in something that day, just taking that extra initiative. So I also loved you, I wrote down, don't just do your job, be passionate. Don't settle. So I love all the things that you talked about today, and so we really appreciate you being here. And I love that we have a full room. It's a, like standing room only, and that's amazing. This is like, I think, one of our biggest groups. So thank y'all all for driving all the way out to Relish, and seeing us. So, I want to just remind that there's sign-in sheets. If you didn't sign in, please do so. And then March 10th is, I'm gonna mess her name up. Do you know Carrie Irons?
I think that's right.
Is that right? Can't, I'm not sure what her name is, but so I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but March 10th is our next speaker. She's the Assistant Vice Chancellor to the A&M System Federal Relations in Washington, DC. So that sounds really big. So it should be a good one to come to.
And the day after that, we have Habitat for Humanity build. There might be a few spots left, just
Yeah.
FYI. So,
Where is the next one?
ooh, I don't.
Do we have that set yet? No, not yet.
I have the rooms reserved at headquarters.
Okay, headquarters. And that's on a Friday. And for you Firefield people, it's the Friday of spring school. And maybe the week before spring break, so, or, well, we get one day of spring break. But Spring day, yeah. So anyway, we've got a lot of things coming up, so thank you all for being here, and thank you, Rebecca.